right, welcome back to the show, everybody. We have a very extraordinary guest today, somebody I have been very much looking forward to not only interviewing, but it's important, the whole story behind my guest today, because this man, Greg Gorman, is the one who discovered me for Playboy and changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I'm going to do a little intro on Greg Gorman. Greg, Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I did this because I wanted to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I think I saw you at my 70th birthday party the last time, and we've talked a few times since then.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I think it's, it's an important part of my story, obviously. People obviously know, I was discovered, but I don't think they know the whole background. So we'll get into it. I'm going to give a little background to our audience on who you are and what you've done, and then,
let me know, and then I'll know who I am too.
And then you'll know who you are too. So Greg Gorman is a world-renowned photographer, and as I said, the one who discovered me at the age of 18. For decades, Greg has been acknowledged and revered for his contribution to the world of photography, and has received many prestigious awards, the Lucie Awards, is that how you say it?
Lucie Awards.
Lucie Awards for Portraiture, and more recently by the Professional Photographers of America, where he received the Lifetime Achievement Award.
That translates to old age.
Does it? No, but Lifetime Achievement, yeah. That's well-deserved, and absolutely you should be in that.
You're kind.
And then another one of your passions, and that you continue to do to this day, is you are definitely one of the most sought-after speakers in the photographic community, and you share your expertise and hands-on photography workshops around the world, which is actually how we met in Santa Fe.
That's right.
Way, way, way back.
And that's where I actually started workshops with Reed Callahan in Santa Fe. That's where he brought me down there, and that's when I realized, this is kind of my passion now after 50 years of taking pictures. I love education and teaching, giving something back.
Yeah, that's what you thrive on.
Yeah, that's what I do. That and fishing.
that and fishing.
Talk about the way we were rather than doing a lot of commercial work these days. Yeah.
So I thought it would be fun before we get into the whole story about how you and I, our chance meeting and what transpired from there, is to talk a little bit about the Barbie twins for two reasons. You worked a lot with the Barbie twins, and the Barbie twins were also featured on my cover of the January 1993 issue, which was one of the best sellers of all time. And
they were true characters, Echo. I had no idea what to expect. I knew they wanted me to shoot them for Playboy. I didn't shoot that much for Playboy. I did a half a dozen covers for them, probably mainly kind of high-profile celebrities. But when those gals came in, it was like two girls from Mars. And I fell in love with them, They were both had great sense of humor, which for me is so important. It's hard to shoot someone that's humor impaired.
Yeah,
and these
definitely.
two giant storms came in, and they were fantastic. We had fun. They didn't take themselves seriously, which is what I loved about them. It made the shoot a lot easier.
Right.
And playing with them and playing off of them made us for a fun shoot. Because when you're shooting somebody and they're butt naked in front of your camera, you get too fucking serious.
Yeah.
It becomes too heavy. And we kept it light and laughing and joking most of the time, kind of like when you and I shot.
Well, that's part of the deal when you're working with you. All I remember is nonstop laughter, consistently. And Shane, Barbie.
You can't take this shit too seriously. You're pumping up the volume on people, making them somebody that they hope they can appear to be but aren't really in real life.
True.
It's another story.
True. And especially in the whole field of nude photography. I know for myself, especially when I started at 18, I was absolutely terrified. But Shane had shared some stories with me too, that because of their eating disorder that they had at the time, and they suffered severely from bulimia, they hated the way they looked, and they didn't want to be naked. They didn't want to take their clothes off. And so she had shared with me that they were very, very difficult to work with, but that they absolutely loved working with you, because not only did you make them look incredible, but they...
thanks to damn good retouching.
Thanks to damn good retouching.
But their spirit and their kindred energy, and it came across in their expressions in their life, and that's what was important in the pictures, yeah.
So one thing that Shane said, I guess it was along those lines, that they were just like, I'm fat, I don't look good, I don't want to take my clothes off. And you said, don't worry, I'll shoot you from Mars. It'll look great. Did that mean the lens that you were shooting with, or
No,
what
I just
was
joked
that
with
about?
them. I
Just
mean,
to
you
get
know,
them...
if I back up or reinforce our insecurities, we're never going to get anywhere.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
we kept it light, and I told them not to worry about it. We could chop it up in Photoshop and make it work, you know. And this was way before Photoshop, you know.
Oh, true.
I think, you
yeah.
know, we shot in the Middle Ages when I photographed them, and so there
Real
wasn't
film.
Photoshop. It's all film.
Mm-hmm. No
So it was
digital.
a hell of a lot harder than it is today. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Do you have a preference between digital and raw film?
Well, you know, today everything is digital
Well,
pretty
of
much.
course.
You know, people still shoot film. I mean, I shoot digital rough, so I shoot very high ISOs. So there is a certain amount of noise and artifacting even in the high ISOs to give it a little bit more proximity to film.
Okay.
Because, you know, film was never that precise, but it always had a much more beautiful, more
Right.
integral look than digital. Digital is just too TV, you know, in
Right.
many ways. But no, I mainly shoot all digital now for many reasons. The supply and demand, I can't get the papers, I can't get the films that I used to like to work with.
Sure.
But you know, when I go back and look at my books and all that I've done, I see that, you know, film just has an inherent look that's just much more real and tangible.
That was my next question.
You and I
is
always shot film.
always
Yeah.
is when
So
looking
it wasn't digital back then anyway.
right when looking at your
Still
previous,
horse and buggy.
Still horse and buggy. Yeah, I was going to ask, when looking at your previous work, I mean, you definitely can see the difference between like raw film and digital. I mean, there is something to be said for it. It was, you know, unique in its own manner, and each photographer that I've asked, they pretty much say the same thing as you. Yeah. So a standard.
Also, you had to know what the hell you were doing back in the film days. I mean, today
Well, it was a
everything is
true
automatic,
craft.
autofocus, auto exposure, Photoshop to fix your mistakes. Everybody has an iPhone and a version of Photoshop, and they all think they're the next Richard Avedon, which is a bunch of bullshit because they have no idea what the fuck they're doing most of the time. So.
Right, exactly. So you shot the Barbie twins a couple times for
Yeah,
Playboy?
I was trying to think, you know, my memory isn't so great anymore, but yeah, I shot them for Playboy at least once, and then I think we did a calendar one time at
Okay.
one point.
Okay. How did you, because I always thought this was interesting, because it's through conducting all of these interviews for the podcast, it seems rare that an outsider photographer comes in and shoots, even for the celebrity pictorials. Like the one that I can remember was Herbert shooting Cindy Crawford. But how did you become involved with shooting for Playboy?
Well, with Marilyn Grabowski, who
Okay.
I worked with very closely, a lot of times when they would make a big financial deal with a celebrity for a cover, I can't even remember who all I did. I know I did Sherry Belafonte and I did Robin Givens.
Okay.
And I think a couple other ones. And the talent said, you know, here's the money deal. We're good with that. But we want Greg Gorman, or, you know, in cases like with some of them, they wanted Herb Ritz or another photographer because they were comfortable working with them.
Right.
And that's true, you know, in all of our careers that we worked in the world of celebrity, is that we had our stable of stars that we always worked with. And it was mainly because the star was more comfortable with that particular photographer, and the photographer also knew how to photograph them better.
Right.
And so without them having to begin over with a photographer, particularly a magazine like Playboy, where they are selling sex to a certain degree, where the sex is probably more important than the integral personality of the individual. Mm-hmm. Celebrities were more comfortable with people that knew that they know how to photograph them and make them look good.
Yes,
Above the neck,
of course.
Besides below the neck. So
Right,
that was
right.
a big reason.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. And Shane Barbie had shared with me that after their first pictorial, which they were not happy with, they were not pleased with the way that the photos came out, and Shane demanded that you were the one to shoot their next issue, and then of course that ended up happening. I thought that was interesting, and that September '91 issue, I think it was the first one that they were on. It broke records by selling out in less than 2 weeks. So
It's funny because it's Shane, the one that's married to Ken Wall.
yeah.
I always wanted to shoot Ken Wall. I worked on a movie with Ken with Bette Midler,
Okay.
and he would never I could never get him to do pictures with me, which is hysterical. I still to this day never met
Right.
him, but we never photographed each other. I never photographed him, I should say.
Huh.
And he was the co-star of the movie with Bette in one of Bette's early movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, I don't really know like his background too much, and like they live a very.
Oh, he had done some pretty
private
interesting movies
life
actually
now.
back in the day. Yeah.
Well, was he awful to you one time? Because
No,
Shane,
he was never awful. He just wouldn't shoot with me. I really wanted to photograph. He was a handsome guy, and I was excited to work with him.
And
I was Bette's photographer. He just didn't really want to do it. I don't know. It was fun, but it's ironic because I worked with him. But he and I've never met actually, other than on the set
on
for
the set,
2
yeah.
minutes, and he didn't really want to do pictures.
Right. Well, Shane raves about about working with you, and it was absolutely like their favorite experience ever. They just enjoyed
Well, they were fun
everything
because they had a
about
great
it.
sense of humor. That's why it was fun.
Yeah, and it should be noted for our audience, especially for a younger generation who may or may not know who the Barbie twins are. So the Barbie twins were the like sex icons of the 90s. The sexiest twins is what they called them. Anyway, they were the it girls. Hef loved them. He told them that they made Playboy a ton of money because their issues sold so much. So they had a very great relationship with Playboy and shot quite a bit. So Shane and Sia Barbie, that's who we are talking about. And then my favorite quote that Shane said was, she said, "I just felt so bad for Stephen Wada and for Greg Gorman because we were the twins from hell. We were divas with a capital D." And I was like, hey, it was your time.
I kind of knew where they were coming from, and we joked and teased about it, and I gave them shit when something was crazy.
Of course.
But, it kept it light, and they just, you just didn't take anything too seriously, and we knew what we had to do. The job, well, here's the job. We got to make the pictures. We got to get the pictures. They got to look right.
Right.
I got to get some sort of a semblance of an image that I can go in and fix and post.
Right.
And we did,
Right.
And they were fun. I didn't find them any more. I've had other people that were more difficult that were humor impaired. At least they had a sense of humor, so we were
humor
able to go
impaired.
there.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
and you've shot with everybody, Greg. I mean, it runs the gamut. Anybody you can imagine, celebrity-wise. Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to get into how you and I met, and this is a really interesting story.
It's a funny story.
It's a funny story.
I've told this story a million times, but I was actually, as you mentioned, in Santa Fe teaching one of my first workshops. Not one of my first, but in the early 90s, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And I was having dinner with my dear belated lost friend Kevin Lynch, who you knew very well, who worked with me for about 25 years of my career, and I learned a lot from him and vice versa, and a wonderful photographer in his own right.
Yes.
We were having dinner at Cafe Escalera, and I was in the midst of doing a bunch of work for German Playboy. Saskia Mittelberg, who ultimately became my German agent, had the idea back in the early days to hire more prolific, well-known personality photographers to shoot the spreads for Playboy rather than Playboy photographers.
Right.
And she brought in a lot of big names to shoot for the German Playboy magazine. And she said to me, I had booked one gal, Kim Snowden, to go on a trip. She said, why don't you take a couple gals with you and knock out a couple covers for us? And I said, okay. So that was in the back of my mind. And one night I was having dinner, as you know now, at Cafe Escalera with Kevin and I don't know who else.
And this is in Santa Fe, New Mexico,
New Mexico.
I'm from, where I grew up. And I was literally a month out of high school. I was 18 years old.
I was having dinner, and here I see this gorgeous creature walking across the room. And I said to Kevin, my God, she's beautiful. I said, I'm going to go up and speak to her and see if she wants to do Playboy. And so I think the first thing I said to you, I came up to you and I said, listen, I'm an openly gay person. This is not a come on, so don't think I'm trying to bed you down. I said, would you be interested? I'm shooting some covers for German Playboy. Would you be interested in shooting a cover for German Playboy? And you said, no.
Absolutely not.
And your mother said, yes, she would. And that's kind of how it began. And after that, it's been a love affair for many, many years. And we shot kind of all over the map. And we did a shoot at one point at also a dear friend that passed away, Forrest Moses' incredible home in Santa Fe. And we had a great shoot and got amazing pictures.
I mean, it was literally like the next day we were up at your workshop and you had set up this whole very private area for me with all the dividers so you could literally
do some test shots.
Yeah, and I think they were like Polaroids, if I recall right.
I
don't
know.
They were very minimal.
Maybe, but it was quick. We shot some stuff. It was all film that we could send to Saskia to get the sign off, and they signed off on you obviously right away.
It was immediate.
Wasn't a question. Yeah, I got the call back, and so that's when it all began. And,
yeah.
But then you and I shot many times for my books of figure studies and portraits and stuff. And I know you're in a lot in volume 2.
Yeah, I think I have two or three pictures in there.
I think you have at least 3 pictures in there, and some of them came actually from our.
From the German Playboy.
From the German Playboy, yeah.
Well, so what was interesting about that, Greg, and my issue stood out for a couple reasons. Number one, it was a bestseller, and also this is a really interesting factoid. Have you ever heard of the Bo Derek printout when printing a publication?
No.
Okay, so Hef decided, because of the success that the Barbie twins had on their first issue with Playboy, and they sold out in 2 weeks, that he was going to again do that on my issue. So they print double copies.
Double run,
right? And again, a bestseller. So I thought that was really interesting.
That's great.
Right. And the photos that we took for German Playboy, Zion National Park, we were on a bus, a big group of us, touring around. It was
we took a big motorhome.
Yeah,
we had a motorhome. You
Vegas.
and Kim
Yeah.
and my team.
Yeah.
So because it was perfect, because we had hair and makeup, we had the assistants.
Yeah.
I mean, we had everything we needed. We could have shot a half a dozen girls, but we had you and Kim.
Right.
And we toured around. We drove all through that. And see, that was Kevin. Kevin
Utah.
organized all that. He knew all the
did he?
locations. And you know, one of the most famous pictures you and I did was at Coral Pink Sand Dunes. That's one of my most
favorite.
famous nudes of you.
Yeah.
And we drove all over.
Yeah.
And I mean, God, it was amazing. And then we rented a big boat on Lake Powell.
Yep.
And went and shot you and Kim. And it was fun. I'd shoot you for a while, and then I'd shoot Kim for a while. I'd wear you out for a bit, and you could chill. And then I'd shoot Kim for a bit.
And it was really great having another female with us.
Yeah, who's a great gal.
Yeah, that I could watch and kind of see what she was doing. I mean, because again, it was all completely new to me, and being nude. I mean, I was very modest, and I was like, I was scared as hell.
Yeah. You covered it well, because you didn't seem to be so scared. You were pretty
I think
good.
once after a couple of days.
it's like with any of my male or female nudes. Everybody's a little uptight before they get naked, but once the clothes are off, it's like, what the fuck? You know,
right,
and then they go for it, and,
yeah.
and you know, it's not people. Once you start, nobody's nude, because it's okay. Here's the goods. This is what it is.
It is what it is, and everybody's doing their job and whatnot. So then, what was interesting, back to my issue, is that the January '93 American issue, they ended up using, I think it was 4 of the pictures from the German Playboy layout that I did October 1992 for German Playboy, and that was very, very rare. I mean, you never saw that.
No, they never usually ran the same pictures or one from the same series anyway.
Right. And then also just the whole vibe, look, feel, and the caliber of the photos were vastly different from what you would see in a typical layout for
Well, it's a different
Playboy,
point of view.
Playmate pictorial.
That was what Saskia saw, which was really one of her great insights, why Saskia was so talented as an art director and creative director for Playboy magazine Germany, is that she thought, as opposed to have your photographers that their career is shooting, Playboy nudes, because I shoot a lot of nudes, but it's still from a different point of view.
Yeah.
And I think she wanted that different aspect of photography as how it approached shooting a figure study, as opposed to your typical, more clinical nudes that, all right, well, we got to see this, you got to turn this. I will tell you a funny story. I did a cover for Playboy with Sherry Belafonte, and we went down to, this is so funny story, we went down to Alamorada, Florida, and we shot, and she had implants put in and the whole 9 yards for the shoot, and we did amazing pictures. We came back and all this stuff, and she came back, we were happy, she took out the implants. I don't know if Sherry'd be happy I told this story, but she's pretty open, and she's one of my dearest friends to this day. And she came back, and then they said, these pictures are great, Greg, but we need pink.
We need pink.
Shot. So she had to put the implants back in. I brought in a Duratrans in my studio, 20,000 pounds of sterilized kitty play sand, and built like a tent and all this shit to shoot this other picture for Playboy.
Wow.
So, and she had to put her extensions for the hair back in. I mean, it was a real rigmarole.
So she got her implants out, and then she had to put them back in to finish the. Wow, that's wild. That's
But we had so much fun.
Yeah.
It was wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who didn't have fun with you? You're legendary. You're the best.
But we had a good time. Yeah.
So the pink sand dunes. That's one of my all-time favorite pictures, and I remember that like that was yesterday. I mean, you literally. I don't remember. Maybe it was Kevin or one of the assistants, but just lowered me back.
We had to lower you in smooth as sand, so we didn't lose the ridges and the lines. Yeah, no, it's one of my very favorite, and that's been one of my better selling nudes of all my nudes. People love that. Oh yeah, that's done well.
That, and then the one where I'm holding I think it was an elk skull in Santa Fe.
Oh, the one in Santa Fe is at Forest Home, which was beautiful.
That's one of my favorites. I have those 2 framed.
There's one where you're laying on a tree branch out in one of those parks.
So that was the very first nude I took with you in Bandelier.
In Bandelier, that's right. That's right out by the atomic plants or whatever.
And when I look at it now, I can kind of see the tension in my face.
Well,
it was
balancing
the first time, and I was balancing on. Yes, I was fully nude, and I was laying on, on bark.
But it was great.
On a tree.
That was back in the days when we did renegade shoots. We rented the motorhome. we got our park permits, but we just would. That looks like a cool location. We just in there, close off, boom, take the picture and out.
Right.
Which was crazy.
Yeah, I do remember that. You're like, we got to go quick. Yeah, you were a master of doing that. So what was so surreal and wild was, so first of all, when this all transpired with you, and I was told that I was going to be October 92 for German Playboy, and I was going to get paid 10 grand, I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. I was 18 years old. I was straight out of high school. I was moving to Austin. I was going to be a struggling college student. And I thought that was it. It was pretty soon after we shot the German Playboy that I got the phone call, and I don't know if it was from you or from my mom, but that Hugh Hefner wanted me to be Miss January 1993. Do you remember any of that, of how that came about? And I've always wondered if it was like Marilyn Grabowski that saw the photos in the German Playboy.
Probably Marilyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably Marilyn, but I mean, she was a right-hand person. I loved Marilyn. She was a wonderful person. I haven't seen her in years. I think she's still around.
She actually lives in Corona Del Mar.
She does? Yeah. She's great. I loved Marilyn. We had a great relationship.
Yeah, I'm trying to get her on the show. So
well, she'd be great. Give her my love.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So yeah, I always wondered about that. I didn't know exactly how.
No, I would say that came from Marilyn. Marilyn was kind of, the director underneath Hef, I think.
Well, no, she absolutely was, and I guess she just kept her eye on all the publications and saw the German issue, and yeah. And then so I was tasked with, okay, now you're flying to the Playboy Mansion and you're going to be Miss January 1993. And so it was literally in a span of just that summer, straight out of high school, that I shot German Playboy. Then I went to the mansion, shot my January 1993 centerfold. And I'll never forget, obviously, going to the mansion for the first time. And I'm in the main house, and there's a bunch of girls there. They're testing, they're working, whatever, right? And first question you always get is, are you testing? And I said, no, I'm shooting my centerfold. And they were like, but no, you have to test. And I'm like, I don't know. All I've been told is I'm shooting my centerfold. I'm Miss January 1993. There was another girl that was sitting at the table, and she's like, that's my month. And I was like, I have no idea. I was like, I've been told I'm not testing, and nobody understood it, but it clearly was because I had already shot the centerfold for German Playboy. So that was my introduction into the whole world. And I mean, my head was spinning. I was like, this is wild. Yeah. And then what transpired from there was, I mean, I worked consistently with Playboy for almost 15 years. I know. 10 covers.
You're the professional bunny. That's why we call you Echo Bunny.
Yes, for my
nickname.
Yes. Greg Gorman gave me the nickname Echo Bunny. That's where that comes from.
That's so funny.
And I use it to this day. Yeah. Echo Bunny 93. So yeah, it was a super, super extraordinary time in my life, and just so eternally grateful. And here I am 30 years later, and it's coming full circle doing this podcast, reconvening with the Playboy family and just conducting really fascinating interviews and just learning more and more about the whole history of Playboy. And
you can keep your clothes on.
And I get to keep my clothes on.
Not that you need to. You look beautiful.
So yeah, it's been quite a ride. Did you ever meet Hef?
Yeah,
you did. What was your take on him?
I met him, but we never really knew each other. And never really had a conversation about any of the stuff I shot. I met him a few times with the girls. I ran into him one time. Met him a couple times at one of my favorite sushi restaurants. He used to hold court sometimes at Katana.
Oh yes, with all the girls.
And you'd have that center room, and there'd be a half a dozen girls with him.
Yep.
So I met him a few times. I went to the mansion a couple times, I think for Halloween parties or something. But,
the Halloween
but
parties
never really had any succinct conversations with him. But Marilyn I knew very well.
Yeah, Marilyn was definitely fond of you.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that you had actually shot with Playboy quite a few times. I thought it was just the Barbie twins.
Robin and I did. Robin and I shot, actually. I think Robin and I shot, I want to say we shot in Santa Fe, and then we shot in Mendocino.
Really?
And all that time, right around the times of all the separation with Tyson. So that was pretty wild. That's when I shot Robin. And Sherry we shot in Florida, and Barbie twins at my home, I think.
Yeah.
And a couple locations, but I think mainly at my home. We did mostly a lot of studio work.
Interesting. Now, tell me about how many books do you have out? How many of your photography books have 13. You published to this day? 13?
Yeah, 13 solo books, yeah.
Wow. And what's the latest one that came out?
Latest one's interesting. It's a book called Homage, which I shot during COVID when I couldn't really have people in my house. And I have a fairly substantial collection of African voodoo and fetish dolls and masks and whatnot, and I bought considerably more during that time, and I started photographing them in my kind of inimitable lighting style. And it was tricky because I'd never done a still life. So then I realized, I don't know if this is enough for a book, if it's that original. And so what I did is my creative director on most of my books, so I'm sure you've met Gary Johns. When I did my LA Iworks campaign with him. He calls it detritus, items in decay, and he did illustration and torn things and found objects and scanning. I said, take my pictures, throw them in the middle of your art, and let's see what happens.
Interesting.
And he said, why would I want to fuck up your art? I said, try it. And it came out really cool. So they look more like paintings. And the concept of the book is really how African tribal art has influenced European and American culture. So that's the latest project, completely unrelated to me shooting dick, pussy, and celebrity.
Yeah,
so
it's vastly
a completely
different
project. And it was really a cool project. So that's the newest one. I didn't show you the book when you were at the house this morning.
You enjoyed doing it and putting it all together.
Yeah, they didn't talk back to me. I didn't have to feed them. They didn't have to use the restroom. If I didn't like the picture, I could reshoot it.
Easy.
And I had some that did talk back to me. Some of the voodoo dolls, had to shoot them 3 or 4 times to get the picture, which was wild. Yeah.
Wow, how interesting is that?
So that was the last project, most recent.
Are you still doing the workshops, or have you kind of slowed down on that?
Yes, of course I am.
So,
I just finished.
Where do you do them?
Well, the next one is really a glamorous one this will be the 4th or 5th year I've taught it up in the Dolomites in the northern part of the southern Tyrol in Italy.
Yeah.
Really breathtaking. And I teach a workshop in Maine every year, which I've been doing for quite a few years with one of my sponsors, Fuji film cameras. And I teach one in the Berkshires. So a few different ones.
Why did you stop going to Santa Fe to conduct your workshops?
I haven't. Well, Reed's out of Santa Fe now. He moved actually up to Maine. I don't teach with him in Maine. But I did more than 20 workshops, I'm sure, in Santa Fe.
Did you?
For all the years, yeah. And I would love to go back and do more in Santa Fe. I actually love teaching there. But,
I can imagine. It seems like
I love Santa Fe, and I always enjoy going back there. And I have a lot of dear friends that live in Santa Fe. It's a wonderful place.
Yeah, it's grown quite a bit. I don't know when the last time is that you were there, but
it's been a while. I haven't been to Santa Fe for probably 5 or 6 years.
It's popping now, that's for sure. Is there any other projects that you want to let the audience know about that you're working on beyond your workshops? And then homage. Oh, where can people purchase your books?
Well, that's a good question. Most of the books, a lot of the books can be purchased online if you just Google.
Okay.
The latest book that probably would be the book Homage is really only available through the museums and gallery exhibitions because it was a limited run on that book.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And the limited edition books can be purchased through me. Through my website, which is just gormanphotography.com.
Okay.
And most of the other books, the last big celebrity book I did, which is actually kind of one of my biggest retrospective books, you can get online through Amazon. It's called It's Not About Me. It's about a 400-page book, big book.
It's
and
not about
all
me.
Just personality pictures, not my nudes and stuff.
Is it all celebrities or
all celebrities?
All celebrities.
All pretty big celebs.
I love that it's called It's Not About Me.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And as John Waters said, it's all about you because in the front and the back is a million pictures of me with all the talent over the years,
Right.
You see me from going with a little bit more hair to no hair. So it runs a time lapse, yeah.
Hey, age, right? It happens to all of us. It is what it is.
And what about you? We've talked a lot about me today. What's on your agenda besides doing these podcasts and all this stuff? What have you been up to?
Well, for the last 10 years, I have been in the field of aesthetics, and I have a skincare studio in Newport Beach, and been doing that and raising my daughter, and
well, that's great.
Living my life, and putting a lot of time and energy into this. This has been quite a project, and it's me, myself, and I doing it all. But it is definitely a labor of love, and
these things take a lot of work and a lot of resourcing. Information stuff. You seem to have really done your homework on me today, which is
yes,
makes it easier for me.
Of course.
You come in and people say, where did you take your first photograph? How did you get into photography? It's like, I've said that story 100 times, so it's nice to talk about different things. And I knew we'd have fun because we always joked and teased together.
So what I did not know is that you went to USC, and that's where you got your Master of Fine Arts degree in cinematography. I had no idea.
Right. That's kind of how it all started. I had grew up in Kansas City.
Right.
And I took my first picture of Jimi Hendrix back in 1968.
That's a very cool golden nugget of history.
I enrolled in photography school at KU, but the only thing they had was courses in photojournalism. And it's ironic because I go back. I love Kansas City. It's my home, and I go back every year on Thanksgiving and hang out with my buddies at the local Italian restaurant and my friends from Jasper's. Jaspers. Yeah, they're just great friends of mine for all my life. And our dads were best friends, and I go back and spend like 10 days there every Thanksgiving, which I just love and
that's
enjoy the
cool.
city. So I went to photojournalism school, but of course it was like, ambulance chasing is
Limited
not what I do.
what you could do
And so
there,
that's when I
yeah.
moved to California and went to film school, but I realized that my real love and real passion was still photography.
What year were you at USC?
70 to 72.
So this is something interesting that that we discovered in conducting these interviews. So there's a big endowment at USC, censorship in cinema, and it's the HMH Foundation. And Hef used to go in and teach classes a couple times a semester in the early 70s when the whole class
It's so funny that you say
was
this.
instated, and I was thinking about that, and I was like, I wonder if you knew anything
Well,
about
yes.
that.
What's really ironic is I had a class on Thursday night at USC called Thursday Night at the Movies.
Okay.
And it was hosted by Arthur Knight, who wrote
Yes.
the Sex in Cinema column
Yes.
for Playboy.
For Playboy, yes.
Yeah, so I
yes.
took that course. And that's where I took one of my early, fairly well-known pictures of Alfred Hitchcock, because he came down and spoke, and Orson Welles. It was amazing.
Wow, no
Robert Altman. Oh, yeah, we had them
way.
all down there. And it was like such a fabulous class. I mean, we have
Yeah.
all these, because Arthur knew all these people. We'd have all the newest movies, and they'd have either the star of the movie, usually the producer or the director, come down and introduce the films. It was a pretty fabulous class to take.
Wow, that is so cool. I'm so glad that I brought that up and had thought about that. If
Back in
you
the
would
day,
know
they
about
had
it.
great instructors. I mean, we had Mort Zarkov, who I think was connected to the Twilight Zone. We had all John Carpenter was teaching animation. So we had really incredible instructors down there back in those days. Yeah.
Wow, what a time to be there.
It was a great time to be at USC. Yeah.
Amazing. Very cool. Okay, so I want to, I end every show with, well, there's two questions, but we're only going to do one with you because the second one wouldn't apply. And is there anything else that you want to mention before we?
No, I think you've done a pretty good job. Definitely pimping out my workshops is great because I love teaching.
Yes.
And they'll the only one that's now slated is for June 2nd to June 8th in the Dolomites. And it's more than half sold out already, which is exciting because I only take it a maximum of 12 people. But I'll have workshops coming up later in the year in the Berkshires and in Maine, which I've been doing every year, which is fantastic. It's just the most beautiful area.
So a maximum of 12. And does it run the gamut, the kind of people that come to your workshops? Is it?
Yes, I mean, it's mainly for me, the most important thing is that it's not that they have to be, totally advanced photographers, but they need to have a passion and they need to understand their camera, how to use a camera.
Okay,
but
yeah, that was my question.
Portraiture and nudes. I teach both. It's a combined thing, yeah.
Okay.
For week-long workshops, yeah.
Awesome. And that can be found on your website?
It'll be on the
Gorman
website. They're up there
Photography?
now. The new one, we finished loading today for the one in the Dolomites, which is we're shooting these
I'm
old
so jealous
castles
you're going
and
there. I
monasteries.
know all
Yeah,
about
it's pretty
that
great.
area.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
Stunning.
And it's all about me. You know me. It's all about food and wine and great, gorgeous models and great locations. It's not that bad.
The wine. We drink so much wine when we were together, always.
Exactly. It's so funny. A couple nights ago, I was having dinner at Matsuhisa, and I ran into Michael J. Fox, who I hadn't seen in years. And I used to shoot all the movie posters with Michael back in the day, and it was so lovely to see him. And he said to me, he says, God, I remember all those memories of drinking wine with you back, in the early days of his early movies like Light of Day and Secret of My Success and some of his early films. It was so great.
I don't know if you remember this, but you had we had a video camera the whole week that we were traveling together through Zion, shooting for German Playboy, and so I have 2 VHS tapes of all of that, and I'm like dying to get it transferred.
I know, I've got them. If you get them transferred before I do,
because I know they're hysterical.
They're hysterical,
right?
And we were laughing so hard. We had that idiot that was on the.
Yes.
We won't discuss now. But it was just crazy. Yeah, I remember.
But
it was crazy. Yeah.
Filled with lots of wine at night, lots of laughter, and I'm looking forward to one day listening to those and going down memory lane. So we end the show with this question. It'll be interesting to see what you say. Everybody says something different.
Are you putting me on the spot?
Yeah,
a little bit.
It's not too much. Okay, so what are 3 words that would define Hugh Hefner to you?
Smart, visionary, ahead of his time. But that's kind of the same as visionary. But I remember, this is a funny anecdote on Hugh, I can tell you. Back in the 50s, and I would say around 57, 50. I mean, I was 8 or 9 years old.
So
I
you
mean,
remember when the first issue?
No,
Or
but
no,
I remember loving Playboy magazine, and I would walk down to Mission Highlands grocery store from my house, and I'd say, I need a copy of Playboy magazine. And of course, you can't legally buy it at that age.
Right.
And so I'm buying this for my father. They'd sell it to me every year. So I'd go buy my Playboy magazine. I just had them stashed under the bed back in the day. That's kind of a good story. That's a true story. Yeah, in the
cool.
late 50s.
Very cool. So you were fond of it from the
get-go.
from
the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Those are good. Visionary. That's something that I always say about him too. All right. Well, that's the last question.
That's the story.
That's
great.
the story. So, again, to the audience, if you would like to know more about Greg Gorman and his incredible career and just follow who he is and what he does, go to gormanphotography.com. And I would definitely encourage you to purchase his books. They are absolutely incredible. And I am just so honored and blessed to not only had met you and established this beautiful friendship that we have.
32 years.
Yeah, but to have been featured in your books as well. I mean, just an absolute honor, Greg.
Yeah.
And it's
honor for me as well. So
thank you. I just can't imagine what my life would be like had I not
turned
met
it around a little bit. Had you not had dinner at Cafe Escalera that night. Exactly.
That one thing. I think it was absolutely meant to be. So, all right. So we're going to wrap up the show. Thank you so very much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
I really greatly appreciate it. To our fans out there, please don't forget to follow us, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bunny Chronicles. You can also support the show on Patreon at The Bunny Chronicles, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.